Okay, looks like we're live. So, hello and welcome to Component Rescue Board Repair. Today, I'm not doing a full board repair. I'm just going to be replacing the LVDS connector on a logic board. And the specific one I'm doing it on is actually a, I believe, 2010 MacBook, one of the white ones with the rubber bottom. However, you can replace all of the ones on the MacBooks from 2008 to 2010, the MacBook Airs from 2010 to 2017, and all of the MacBook Pros from 2009 until 2015 in this exact same way, since even though the connectors on some of them are slightly different, they all look about the same and you solder them all on the same way. So I'll switch over to the microscope. So on this specific one, there was no backlight on it, and everything on the board looked great. However, let me see if I can get you guys to see that. You can see that I pulled up on the metal on the connector there so I could remember it's broken. But I don't know if you guys can see down in there, but the inside of the connector is completely charred right in the middle, right around where I made the little bend in the metal. I don't know how well you guys can see that. But so to get that working again, I already replaced the cable that goes to the screen since that was burned too. So now we're going to go ahead and replace the actual connector on the logic board with a new one. Which, as you can see, the LCI right there is tripped, which means that this was likely liquid damage. But like I said, nothing else on the board looked liquid damaged at all. And you can kind of see a little bit of corrosion on there. So to get this off a little easier, I'll go ahead, well actually no wait, that's not corrosion, that's burning. I'll add a tiny bit of flux to it just to help it come off the board a little easier. And one more thing, okay good, I already got the speaker off the other side because you don't want to burn that. Okay. And to get this off, you'll just get your hot air. And you'll just evenly heat it up. And it's okay to burn the connector a little bit since you're pulling this one off. Oh no, it's sliding away from me. So just kind of keep heating it until it eventually comes off like that. And then you just pull it off, set it off to the side. And the next thing you'll want to do is clean up all the pads. Most of the time when you're replacing a connector, it's because the board is liquid damage. So a lot of the time, you'll have to clean off the pins because they'll have a lot of corrosion on them, especially the backlight ones. And you'll just have to check on, for the specific board you have, which one or what each pin is specifically, since it's different on each of the boards. But on this one, all of the pins look fairly clean, so I'm not going to have to do any scrubbing on them. But we'll go ahead and add some leaded solder to all the pads to make them easier to wick away. And then I will grab my wick, which is right here. And I need to cut it. Okay. We'll get some heat on there. And just wick right across like that. And we'll wick this away up here. This pad up here is always a little bit more difficult since it has such a high thermal mass because it's so big. Sometimes you might have to use your hot air gun to melt the solder. And then use your tweezers to hold the wick on it. I don't know how well you guys can see that, because the lighting might be a little off. But now that we got that cleaned up, we'll grab some alcohol and clean that all off. Which I need to heat this up just a tiny bit. So I'll add a little bit of heat to it with my hot air gun, just to remelt the flux so I can get it all off of there. And then we can clean it all away with some alcohol. Okay, that's all nice and clean. So now we'll go ahead and grab the new connector and set it down on there. Just like that. And you don't have to line it up perfectly just yet, since you still gotta put some flux on here. So the way that's easiest for me to do this is going to be, see the two large pins on the side with all of them on the end of the connector? I usually find it easiest to solder those two on first to hold it in place, and then go and do each of the other pins. So to do that, first you want to get it lined up just perfectly. Just like that. And then you'll grab your soldering iron, and you want to put just a little bit of solder on the end of it. Then with one hand you'll use your tweezers to hold the connector in place, and then with the other, oops, yep, oh come on. Okay, there we go. And then with the other hand, I'll flip this around to make this a little easier. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, now that we got it lined up again, I'll press down and get it soldered down on this side. That's going to need some more solder. There we go. And then I'll get this touched up here. Okay, now that I got those two, anchoring that in, next thing to do is to go through and solder each of the pins of the connector. This is probably the most difficult part of doing all of this. So first you'll put down a good amount of flux. And there's two ways to do this, but there's one that I kind of prefer to do it. And the way I prefer is to kind of just solder each pin individually. So you just get some solder on your iron, and well, it looks like I messed that up. So I'll just go ahead and do it the other way. So like I said, there's a few ways to do this. If you're okay with having to go back and touch stuff up, you can do it either way. But this way, what you do, you just kind of get some solder on there, and you just kind of drag it along. I'll solder these last two pins individually, since they kind of want to be nice. And then when you're done, of course a bunch of them are going to be bridged. So you'll add quite a bit more flux and go clean them all up and unbridge anything that's bridged together. So the easiest way to unbridge them is kind of like that. Just go on the first ones that are bridged and just kind of flick it downward, and you'll pull the extra solder off. Kind of like that. And then if you still have some stuck on there on just a couple of pins at the end, you'll grab the wick and you'll just kind of wick away the last little bit that's still on there. Man, this does not want to come off. Okay, there I got two of them undone. Maybe if I add a little bit of flux, which I guess I can turn my hot air off now. I don't really need that on anymore. Well, those last two pins do not want to come unbridged. So let me see if I can zoom in a bit so you guys can see this a little better. See how there's a little solder bridge between the two pins? That is what I'm trying to get rid of right now. So here's the wick. Where's my iron? There it is. There we go. And we got rid of it. And did I have a bridge up here at the top? I do have a small bridge. And now it's gone. Okay, so the next thing you want to do after you have all the pins soldered is you'll grab your tweezers and you want to check each pin to make sure that it's actually soldered on. And how you can do that is just kind of push on it. So just kind of push on every single pin. And they shouldn't move at all. You don't want to put too much force on them or you'll break the joint, but kind of push on it, like, you know how a lot of components when they're loose from liquid damage and you can just kind of knock them off, like put about that much force on them. But check each one to verify they're all soldered on. That's good. If you get one that moves, like this one right here, see how that pin is moving? Then that means that here we got 2 of them, 3, 4, a lot of these aren't. So if you have any pins that move like that, that means that they're not soldered on, so you'll want to go back and try resoldering those again. So I'll add a little bit more flux, and we'll grab the iron. Actually, which ones were these? It is, I think, so those two. Okay, so there's 4 of them in total. Those 2, that one, and that one. Okay, so now that I touched them up, I'll check them again. Okay, that one is still loose. Everything else is good. Okay, so now those are all soldered on now, and none of them are loose. So now the final thing to do is solder the edges of this on. So there's an edge down here. You'll add a little bit of flux. And you got to be really careful with this not to put too much solder on there, because if you do, then a part of the blob might go into the connector and then you won't be able to use it. So the easiest way is get a little bit of solder on your iron and just kind of touch it to the board. Like that. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. So that's soldered on nicely. And now we'll do the other corner. Once again. We will add some flux over here. And then just touch the iron to this. To solder it on. So we need a little bit more. There we go. And now this should be good to go. So that is the basics of how you solder a LVDS connector. And like I said, this works on any of these that have this kind that you just plug the screen in. There's a different way on the newer ones since they have a different screen, but this is pretty much will work on most of the MacBooks, MacBook Pros, and MacBook Airs. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and hopefully I'll have some more repairs to stream soon. See y'all later.